Cheers, guys, and welcome to Uncle Scott's Pancast podcast. Woo! In the old Pancast today, we're going to talk LED versus halogen light bulbs. We're going to talk about the egg shortage, egg inflation. Got a little bit more on the RFK Jr. controversy when it comes to food quality. Going to talk Dutch ovens, stove cleaning, and more. Let's jump in and get started. Going to start today with the light bulbs. This Ventwood here, it came with halogen light bulbs. And after I used them for a couple of years, I noticed they put out a lot of heat. They tend to burn out fairly rapidly every 6-8 months or so. And what I did is replace those guys with LED light bulbs. I am now going to switch back. Now, what I've found is that with the LEDs, they last a long time. And I went back and looked. I did a video on swapping those guys out, showing how I did it. And that was almost 6 years ago, these light bulbs here. And none of them have burned out. So you get a lot of longevity with the LEDs. You also get, they run a little bit cooler. And because you don't need to replace them as often, they are a little bit more economical over the long term. However, what I ran into with these LEDs, and the reason I'm swapping them out and going back to halogen, is that they have a flicker. And sometimes it's visible to the naked eye, and sometimes I would see just some juddering and flickering over here on the stovetop. Also, these things have a flicker rate that normally the human eye can't see, and I think it's 60 times a second or so. It could be wrong about that. But with digital cameras, filming cooking videos, sometimes if you don't have the camera set correctly, you can get a very bad just vibration, almost shuddering, jittering effect with the LED light. So what I've done is gone back to the halogens. And what I like about the halogens, even though I'm going to have to replace them a little bit more often, you get a very warm, yellow, consistent source of light with no flicker. So I'm going back to halogens. Now, when I was changing out those light bulbs, it kind of occurred to me that I need to do at least some version of a deep cleaning on the stove. It was getting kind of out of hand. Been well over a year since I'd done a deep cleaning on the old stove. So what I did starting out was just the aluminum vent grates. I ran these through the dishwasher a couple of times there and kind of got some of the grease off of those guys. Burner rings. The burner rings here were absolutely encrusted in some, it's essentially like seasoning, some burnt on, probably oil that just will not even remotely wash off. So what I like to do with these burner rings is take a Ziploc bag and I put roughly an 1/8 or so cup of ammonia in the bag and put the rings down in there. Seal that bag up. Working with ammonia, it puts out a lot of fumes and you got to have good ventilation. So I do this out in the garage. Seal that up, leave them overnight, take them out, and then just with a scrubby sponge, give those a wash, and 90 to 95% of the gunk comes off. Now you can spend more time and hours with Brasso or doing this again, but I find that this is good enough for me. And this is a 10-year-old stove and it's cooked on every day. And the problem with cleaning a stove is you start to cook on it again and you mess it up immediately after you've cleaned it. So there's a point of diminishing returns of cleaning these pieces over and over and over and trying to get them absolutely perfect. Now the burners also have these bronze burner caps, and these are fairly heavy and very solid. I find that the ammonia works for those as well, but I take care to not have those soaked in ammonia or immersed in the ammonia. As a matter of fact, it's usually the ammonia vapors that seem to do the work of lifting the gunk off of the metal. So what I like to do is just have those in the bag and have it sealed up with the ammonia in there, but not actually wet. And then with the brass, I hit these guys with some Brasso. And I don't think these are ever going to look like they are brand new, but it does get off most of the tarnish. Then also for the cast iron burner grates, I also put those in garbage bags with ammonia and tie the garbage bags up so the ammonia can't escape, and that lifts off most of the stuck-on gunk. And then for the stainless steel, the painted surface and the backsplash in the stainless steel, there I don't use anything harsh. I don't use any SOS pads. I don't use any even barkeeper's friend on those. I just use dish cutting, grease cutting dish soap and some hot water and rags and wipe that down really well. And I think it's not perfect, but 95% of the way there. And that is good enough for me. Now, I've had a couple of people write in about these utensils and wondering whether I keep those up there all the time. Yes, I do. And normally they don't get any splatter or a steam on them if I cook on the front burners. If I'm cooking on the back burner, I just do the old shower curtain and slide them over. If I'm cooking chicken, fried chicken, or cooking some hamburgers where there's a lot of splatter, I just remove them. And occasionally, no matter how hard I try, they do get a little bit messy, and occasionally I just give them a good wash. But yes, I do leave those up there all the time. People often ask, what brand of stove is this? This is an Ilve Majestic, made in Italy, and has the matching range hood, backsplash, and for an extra $500, had to get the high altitude gas conversion kit. But maybe someday we'll do an in-depth deep dive on the old Ilve here. Let's talk about egg prices, egg inflation, egg shortages, several things going on. I mentioned it in the last Pancast and asked what you guys were seeing where you are. So I got a little bit of feedback from you guys on that. Just today, I noticed that Costco, Trader Joe's, and I believe Sprouts market have put limits on the amount of eggs you can buy. So places are running out of eggs, and certain people are hoarding. Now, I don't know why anyone would hoard eggs. I kind of understand it when it was bottled water and toilet paper back in the COVID panic days. But if you get 6, 8 dozen eggs, what are you going to do with them? I don't know. 1 or 2 dozen, I kind of understand, but hoarding a perishable product doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Also noticed that Waffle House has instituted a 50-cent per egg surcharge to kind of help mitigate some of the price increases during the shortage here. Let's see, from some of you guys, Dennis McCaffrey in Indiana says his Kroger has plenty of eggs, $4 a dozen. So not too bad there. J Prime in Colorado says his Costco is completely out of eggs, and the Walmart has a limited selection, and they're $1 an egg. So $12 a dozen in Colorado. Mark Phillips down in Dallas says their Sam's has been out of eggs. Other places they're running around $4 to $5 a dozen. Tracy Morris up in northwest rural Montana, up in that Kalispell, Whitefish area, beautiful country up there. Let's see, Tracy says she is hoarding the 2 eggs that her backyard chickens produce per day. And here I want to bring up backyard chickens. Lots of people are talking about going to backyard chickens to deal with the egg shortages and the increase in egg prices. Do you really want to do that? Because you know what chickens produce? In addition to eggs, they produce chicken poop. And I just read a government statistic. In 2022, eggs were $2.50 or so a dozen. Now they're about $4.15 a dozen nationwide, if you can find them. If you use a dozen eggs every 2 weeks, can you come up with that extra $1.50, $2? Or would you rather shovel chicken poop every day? I think I can clean out from under the couch cushions and under the car seat and maybe find that $2 and deal with the egg inflation that way, at least for me. And when it comes to the reasons for the egg inflation, we were talking about that. Let's see, PDX Tundra wrote in and said I was a nut job and didn't realize the reasons for the egg inflation. Let's jump into that a little bit. I think there is a base level of underlying inflation throughout the economy. I think food inflation has been a little bit higher than that as well. And then on top of that, you've got the bird flu pandemic. And there's been a cull of chickens. I read that about 150 million chickens have been killed off to try to mitigate the spread of bird flu. I feel sorry for the old chickens being culled. Now, if a chicken lays an egg once per day and you kill off 150 million chickens, you got to replace 150 million eggs somewhere. Now, going back to my economics 101, if you've got a constant level of demand and you reduce supply, the price of the product goes up. So on top of underlying food inflation, the supply shock when it comes to eggs is probably what's sending the price through the roof. Now, just for fun, what I've done to kind of mitigate a little bit of the food and egg inflation is I bought a couple of shares of Costco and I bought a couple of shares of Cal-Maine. Cal-Maine, the largest egg producer in the country. So if there is an increase in egg prices, you kind of get a little bit of from Cal-Maine at the production level, and then you reap a little bit of that from Costco at the retail level. So all that egg and food inflation can actually be beneficial to your pocketbook if you configure your investments accordingly. Okay, besides buying eggs, let's talk a little bit about cooking eggs. Let's see, Relax-IL7ZN wrote in about one of my egg sliding videos showing how to get nonstick eggs. He said he liked the video, but he doesn't get the whole eggs with color are gross narrative. Now, I'm not sure I said those exact words, but I did remark on I don't like color on my over easy fried eggs. He mentions that he likes crispy fried eggs. I'm going to differentiate here between a crispy fried egg where you want some browning and that's what you're going for, versus what I was talking about, a lot of these internet eggs where somebody cooks a fried egg and they're trying to show how they got it to be nonstick and slide around the pan and they flip it over and it's just almost charred edge to edge. It's as brown as shoe leather. If you want browning on your egg, that's one thing. If you don't know how to cook an egg, that's another. Okay, since we're talking eggs, we also need to talk a little bit about butter. I put up a poll. So the poll for the next Pancast is asking you guys, do you leave your butter out at room temperature or do you refrigerate your butter? I'll put a link to the poll somewhere below. Make sure you get your vote in before the next Pancast. Let's see, I put up a recipe video showing how I like to make some spicy kicking air fryer chickpeas. Recipe is very simple. If you want to give it a try, you just take a can of supermarket chickpeas, 16 ounces or so, drain them, dry them a little bit, dry them for about 10 minutes in the air fryer, take them out, and then add some olive oil, some salt, some pepper, and some spices. I use garlic powder and cayenne pepper, and put those back in the air fryer for another 8 minutes or so, and they turn out really nicely. See, Lizard 2023 wrote in about the recipe and asked if the chickpeas pop in the air fryer. In one normal can of chickpeas, one batch of chickpeas, I usually hear 4 or 5 of those chickpeas pop, and it sounds almost like popcorn. Actually a little bit louder, but it's nothing significant and nothing to worry about, at least to the ones I've cooked. See, Nano TOJ wrote in about the spice blend and said he doesn't need that kick from the cayenne and the ones he makes. He's going to try some other blends. By all means, try other spice blends. And if you come up with a tasty one, post it so the rest of us can try it. The other day, instead of the cayenne and garlic powder, I used some Italian seasoning, and that worked pretty well. Let's see, Eric Fielding 668 wrote in about enamel cast iron Dutch ovens. He says for bread making, he highly recommends a Dutch oven with no enamel coating. The Dutch oven should be preheated empty to a high oven temp. He goes for 475 Fahrenheit. And he says repeated wear and tear of this sort will shorten the life of an enameled Dutch oven. Definitely some truth to this. Now, I've not experienced it myself, but I know some of the manufacturers recommend against preheating an enameled Dutch oven dry. And somewhat ironically, they will have recipes that you can try, and a lot of times they then recommend that you do preheat them dry. So there's definitely some disconnect there. But what apparently can happen is that these Dutch ovens have multiple layers. You got the cast iron, you can have a layer of enamel, layer of paint, more enamel, more paint, more enamel. And they can be, they can have 5 or so layers on these Dutch ovens. And at a microscopic level, apparently each of those little layers expands and contracts at different rates. So if you preheat in a Dutch oven dry, each of those little layers over time expanding and contracting, that can lead to what some people call crazing. And you get some little cracks in the enamel. Haven't experienced it myself, but it may be something to look out for if you bake in your enamel cast iron Dutch oven. And then from a certain point of view, if over 10 or 20 or 30 years, of repeated use with your enamel cast iron Dutch oven. If you actually wear out the enamel from use, that's almost a badge of honor. Okay, now in the last Pancast, I stepped on the RFK Jr. landmine. And I had the nerve to mention that if RFK Jr. happens to get confirmed, then I hope he will be successful in increasing the quality of the U.S. food supply. That seemed to set several people off. So out of 4,400 people that watched the last Pancast, 31 or so had hissy fit meltdowns and stormed off and said they are not coming back. So I think the rest of us here, now that the fussy butts have kind of self-selected and left, the rest of us can talk about the food supply and what's going on in Washington, hopefully. This is, after all, a food, drink, and kitchen Pancast. We can talk about food issues. When it comes to RFK Jr., I'm going to completely admit that lots of people absolutely hate the guy, and he's probably said and done some crazier things in the past. But at the same time, he is the hand we have been dealt, and he has made food safety and health of the American food supply a forefront issue. And if we get rid of him, who do we have on deck? What is the better plan? Who is coming along behind him? Is it going to be somebody that takes donations from big agriculture, the consumer packaged goods companies, and kind of prevents change? Or is there a more robust change agent available that's going to help the American food supply? Let's turn this around and look at it from a different point of view. We've got roughly 55 million school kids in America. RFK says lots of these kids are fat, they're unhealthy, they're out of shape, they get very poor nutrition. And he wants to increase the nutritional quality and content of school lunches. If you hate RFK Jr. so bad that you get rid of him and he is not confirmed, are you thereby also dooming 55 million kids to have crappy school lunches every school day for the next 4 years? Or if not, we're completely reasonable people. We can talk about this here. Show me who you got on deck. Who is up next? What is the backup plan here? Who else is going to shine so much light on this issue and actually get anything done? Now may be the moment when we have a chance to actually impact and change the course of the American food supply. So sometimes for the greater good, you may have to hold your nose and close your eyes and realize that someone like RFK, lots of stuff we don't like about him. I don't like a lot of things about him myself either, but he may be the man of the moment. He is the hand we are dealt, and he may be the best choice at this moment to get us from where we are to where we want to go, at least in terms of food quality and health. But I am all ears and willing to discuss any alternatives. If you have someone else, if you have a better plan, somebody else on deck, by all means, let me know and we will discuss it here. Okay, make sure you get your votes in on that butter poll. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time on Uncle Scott's Pancast podcast.